I'm just going to make this a series because honestly, sometimes I procrastinate on my knitting tasks that I need to do, but I don't want to do. And what better way to motivate myself to get my knit together than to make it into content? So, on this installment of getting my knit together, I have a very specific goal, and I'm not giving myself any excuses. I have a weekend with no concrete plans ahead of me. It's a Friday afternoon at 4:44 p.m. I wrapped up work early. I am feeling the weekend vibes, and I just I'm tired of me. I'm tired of myself. I'm tired of my excuses. I'm tired of my procrastination. It is just time to get it together. So, I talked about this project before. This is my Northwoods V-neck sweater. I knit it maybe 9 months ago. I knit it last summer and it fit wonderfully when I first blocked it. But after a few wears, I experienced some extreme, well, not extreme, but some significant shrinkage. It still fits. I can put it on. It goes on my body pretty effortlessly. Like it is, as a sweater, it technically fits my body, but it does not fit the way I want it to fit anymore. Now, I could reblock this and stretch it to give me some more room, but I know it's just going to revert back to its current state. And I'm not one to pin out knitting when I block it unless it's a specific stitch pattern that will benefit from being pinned out, like a lace or cable or something like that. But for a plain stockinette sweater, I don't want to have to be committed to pinning it out to and blocking it to how I want it to fit every few wears. So I've shared a little bit of the background with this project, but basically I knit it, it shrunk over time in ways that my gauge swatch did not alert me to. And so now I am left with a sweater that is far too cropped, a little bit more snug than I would like, but not unwearably snug in terms of the circumference. And the sleeves are shorter than I would like them to be. So I really want to add some length to the body and to the sleeves. I used some Brooklyn Tweed MBU yarn, the coned yarn. I have plenty of extra, so there's really no excuse why I haven't gone back and fixed this project. And it's really sad because when I first finished it, I loved it. I loved wearing it. But at this point, it is virtually unwearable for me. Like, your preferences may be different, but this is far too cropped for me. This is my belly button. I'm not stretching it out. I'm not standing awkwardly. Like in a relaxed posture, this doesn't even cover my belly button. And as a 34-year-old adult person, I'm just not okay with that. I'm just not okay with wearing clothes that don't fit me. So I need to address that. And I've I've gone back and forth on this, but I think I've decided to do a little bit of sweater surgery. So I'm going to insert a lifeline just above the ribbing, cut off the ribbing, re-knit the stockinette that I want to add, and then Kitchener back on the ribbing. It's either that or cut off the ribbing and re-knit the extra stockinette and re-knit the ribbing and bind off. Honestly, I could go either way with it, but I am intentionally not going to be re-knitting any yarn I frog because I just think the texture is going to be so much different than the yarn straight off the cone. And I want to make sure I am achieving a uniform fabric with the length that I add. So I'm adding length to both the body and the sleeves. I'm going to give it another block. And honestly, I know this sweater because before it shrank and I realized it was too cropped. I lived in this thing. I wore it so much and it's really a shame. And it's such a silly thing to prevent me from wearing it. So I need to take care of this. And while we're here, I'll give you a brief little project update. I have 2 sweaters going right now that is pretty out of character for me, but no regrets. I'm just leaning into the chaos right now. I just did a mid-project block on this number here. This is my Tane pullover by Rebecca Clow. Look at this drape. It's really, really beautiful. I'll try it on, and I'm going to share with you something that I think I'm going to need to fix. In the pattern, the instructions say or recommend to go down a needle size when it comes to the body ribbing. So all of the ribbing here is half fisherman's rib. It's not just a regular 1x1 rib. And in the body ribbing specifically, it suggests going down a needle size, but it doesn't specify how far to go down in needle size, which I thought would have been a helpful piece of information. So I think I went down 1 needle size, and I still am getting a little bit of flaring at the hem. Not sure how obvious that is. It's not unwearable, but it's noticeable enough for me to consider addressing this. But it may work itself out after a few wears. So I'm not going to fix it right away. I'm going to continue knitting on it. I'm going to knit the sleeves, block the sweater again, and then assess from there. Because if I do anything, I'll cut off the ribbing, re-knit the half fisherman's rib in an even smaller needle, and hopefully that will fix my problem. But for now, other than the ribbing, I am very pleased with the overall fit of this sweater. I like the wide collar. My t-shirt is crooked underneath. That's a little better. I like the wide collar. I don't mind that it stands up a little bit. The pictures that I looked at is kind of like the vibe of this sweater, so I'm not mad at that at all. I think the fisherman's rib, the half fisherman's rib, opened up beautifully with the blocking. And honestly, this was a very transformational blocking situation. Let me move this camera down so you see more of the sweater. Yeah, this was a very transformative before and after blocking, and I wish I would have captured some footage of how it looked before I blocked, but I was really concerned that this wouldn't fit, but it bloomed, it opened up beautifully, and I'm very excited to have this finished whenever that happens. And yeah, let me know what you think. Other than the flaring at the hem, very, very pleased with this so far. This is a brand new Moonset polo. That is right. I've licked my wounds, I've healed from my trauma, and I am once again knitting the Moonset polo in a better suited yarn. So I'm using Let Lope Be, which is the yarn it called for. I think the colorway I have is chocolate, and we don't have the best lighting. Oh, this seems pretty accurate. So it's this really rich brown. And at first glance, you might think that this is an extremely similar color to the original yarn that I was using, but the difference, although subtle, is enough. And it's crazy because in certain lights, it looks very similar to the yarn I was using before, but I like it so much better. So color is just such a weird, finicky thing for me, and I didn't realize I was so picky about it until now, I guess. So yeah, that is a very quick and dirty whip update. None of the whips matter more than fixing my V-neck sweater though. So that is officially my focus for this weekend. So the sun has set and the big light is on. So that's how you know we mean business. And my t-shirt is still wrinkled in case you cared about the status of that. But here is what I've done. There's a lot of needles happening here. I'm so glad I bought a second 30-inch cable for my ChiaoGoos because that really came in handy for this specific task. So I have entered 2 lifelines. One of the lifelines is 2 rounds above the ribbing, and the other lifeline is 3 rounds above the first lifeline. So between each needle, I have 3 rounds of stockinette. And my next step is going to be to cut. So now I'm going to just cut a straight line down that middle round of stitches. And then I will frog out those extra rows above and below where I cut. Then I'll be left with the body of the sweater on one set of needles and the ribbing on a second set of needles. And from there, I will just knit stockinette onto the body and then join the ribbing back again with the Kitchener stitch. I feel like I sat down an hour and a half ago. This hasn't been a particularly fast process, but I did find a really interesting documentary called Secret Mall Apartment, where apparently this group of artists just set up an apartment in a dead space in a mall in the early 2000s, and it didn't get discovered for years. So that's been entertaining me while I tediously pick up hundreds of stitches. I mean, it's a simple enough task, but I definitely found myself getting a little off track and having to redo inserting the lifelines in certain sections. And I'm still not 100% certain that I've picked up a straight line of stitches. I think I'm going to have to learn that the hard way once I do my cutting. I hope it's not too chaotic, but we shall see. This feels like a terrible mistake. It is very satisfying to cut, though. It makes me want to stick something again. Okay. Ah! Right now, I'm just pulling out. So there you can see where I cut. I tried to cut along that middle round of stitches between my 2 lifelines, and that left 1 round above where I cut and 1 round below where I cut. So now I'm just ripping that one of those rounds out. And this seems to be going exactly to plan. So we have these little loose pieces from the remainder of the round where I cut it. But other than that, this seems to be working. I mean, yikes. Oh, let me not get ahead of myself. I was about to say, this is going so well. That could change. Oh, no. So it seems like I got misaligned and now I can't frog because of my lifeline. Yeah, I think it's just this one stitch. I know what I'm gonna do. Nothing a stitch marker can't fix. Honestly, I'm surprised at how well that went. So here I have that bonus round that I frogged. I think I'm just gonna break this yarn and start knitting straight from the cone because I don't want to deal with any potential issues with a different tension or gauge with the noodly yarn. And like I said, I have plenty of extras, so I'm not trying to be super conservative with yardage. And here is what the stitches look like. So everything is successfully back on the needles and ready to be knit. Only mishap I encountered was it looks like one singular stitch. I put my lifeline, I think, in the row above where the rest of them were. So this I'll have to just put back on the needles when I knit to this stitch. But otherwise, everything looks perfect. I'm going to swap out for the needles that I was actually knitting this sweater with because these are much smaller. And then I have, I would say 2 to 3 inches of just plain stockinette to work on to I wish I would have done some more detailed measuring to determine how much length I did want to add, but I think I'll compare to a sweater that fits me well and eyeball it from there. So it's not going to be a super precise modification in terms of measurements, but any amount of length I can add is going to be better than what I was dealing with before. I am officially sick. I was convinced that it was allergies. It's not allergies. It's a full-blown cold. The good thing is that I am not going to feel like this forever or for the entire spring season. This is temporary. It'll be a few days and then I'll be over it. But until then, I will be miserable in the house. Wanted to give a quick project update, and I'll keep this brief because I hate hearing myself talk right now. I can only imagine how it sounds to you. So the sweater is back on the needles. I've knit about 15 rounds of stockinette, and you can definitely see a difference in the texture between the old fabric and the new fabric that I'm adding. But I think with blocking and wearing, that will resolve itself. So I have decided arbitrarily to add 4 inches of stockinette to the sweater. And I measured my gauge on the shrunken fabric. And my row gauge in particular is 7 rows per inch. So to get 4 inches, I would need to knit 28 rounds of stockinette. But I'm actually going to knit 30 rounds of stockinette because I have to make up for the 3 rounds I sacrificed during the sweater surgery. So if you recall, I inserted a lifeline just above the riveting and I inserted another lifeline 3 rounds above that. So in between those 2 lifelines are 3 rounds that no longer exist as a result of this process. So I'm going to knit 2 of those rounds into the stockinette I'm adding onto the body. And then the third round will be made up for when I Kitchener the hem back on to the body. So that should give me about 4 inches worth of additional length. And it was important for me to measure my row gauge on the shrunken fabric because I know whatever I'm adding today is going to shrink just like the rest of the sweater did. And where 4 inches came from, I don't know. I held up a ruler. I remember where the sweater hit me, which is maybe an inch above my belly button. And then I measured from that point to where I would want it to hit, and it was about 4 inches. I may add a couple to that, a couple rounds to that, but as it stands now, that is the plan. So 30 rounds of stockinette I'm adding to the body, and I'm about halfway there now. So honestly, I think, especially since I'm sick, I'm gonna stay home. I've already run my errands for the day, so I'm just chilling in the house for the rest of the day. I definitely think I can get that done today, which is exciting because I just built this task up to be so much more involved than it actually has been so far. And it feels good to finally be taking care of this, getting my knit together. And with that, I will bid you farewell. I don't plan to talk to the camera for the rest of the day, at least until I get some medicine. And I'm anticipating I'll be able to check in tomorrow with a finished sweater. It's a much gloomier day, but the vibes are anything but, because I did it. I lengthened my Northwoods V-neck sweater. So I'm going to do a try on because I made a bit of a decision on where to go from here. When I first introduced this project, I mentioned how I wanted to lengthen the body, which I have done. This is in a much more appropriate length. It's coming down to my hips. Here's my belly button. So a few inches, maybe, yeah, a few inches past my belly button right now. But I know I'm going to lose some of this length. So it's at, I think, a bit of an awkward length right now. But once I block it and wear it and the new fabric shrinks like the rest of the fabric has, I think I'll end up with a length that I'm happy with. So I'm really glad I did that. And I've changed my mind. I don't know if it's out of laziness or if I truly think the length of the sleeves right now is fine. But I've decided not to add any length to the sleeves. Honestly, the length as it stands now is a bit more practical in terms of just going through my day-to-day actions. So for now, the plan is to leave the sleeves as they are. You could definitely see a line where I added the new stockinette. So this is the first row of the stockinette I added yesterday. And then I Kitchenered the ribbing back onto the sweater. And I'm really impressed with my tension on the Kitchener stitch. I don't think it's very noticeable at all. There is a section here on the back where the Kitchener row is like noticeably tighter tension. But as I was working through it, I was figuring out the tension and I loosened up a bit. The key is that I have found helpful is to hold my index finger between the two needles as I'm doing the Kitchener stitch instead of holding the needles right next to each other. And so holding my finger in between them is sort of an easy way to loosen up the tension. Now all I have to do is block it and then I'll be able to wear this. I don't know how much time I have to wear it currently because it is March 22nd. So I only have maybe 2 or 3 weeks where there's even a chance of it being cold enough to wear a sweater like this. But nevertheless, I'm glad. I'm glad I finally tackled this task, and I'm glad that this video motivated me to do it. So let me know if you've ever done a similar sweater surgery and if you had any success. And if there's any knitting tasks that you're procrastinating on, just go ahead, do yourself a favor, carve out a weekend and just take care of it. Because now that this is done, I can return to my Kelly Green sweater and my Moonset polo and just knit to my heart's delight. Contented with the fact that I finally took care of my Northwoods V-neck sweater. And I think next weekend or the weekend after, I'll do the same thing again. I'll pick a knitting task that I've been putting off and I'll just knock it out.
thanks for keeping me company while I kind of face my demons. And I hope this gives you some encouragement to take care of the knitting tasks that you've been putting off. So if that's the case, let me know what you finally decided to take care of. And I'll close it out here. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.